Well, friends, Pastor Pete here on a Friday morning, and just wanted to touch base with you before Sunday. And if you notice here, I'm just walking beside where we would normally walk up to the church, and there's a fair bit of water on the grounds here beside me. Let me show you a little closer look. There's a piece of PVC pipe coming out of the wall, which is the wall of the little room underneath the stairs beside the furnace room at the back of the church. And as you can see, a fair bit not only of water draining out of here continually, but a good bit of construction material as a result of a pretty major. This past Sunday afternoon, before Ivan was leaving church, he went downstairs and noticed a fair bit of water down there, and upon investigation realized that there was a pretty major leak in a pretty majorly broken pipe, part of the weeping tile system that generally takes the water away from the church, was actually seeping into the church. And as a result, his son Ark and our friend Vlad spent, 12 hours on Monday, all day, breaking a 4 feet hole in the concrete in that room to install a new sump pump and to actually get that water away from the church. It's not only a pretty major fix, but there's still a pretty major problem that we are going to have to address in the coming months. But as I come into church and as I see, the water, and I see some of the debris there, it really does bring to mind a profound sense of gratefulness. Gratefulness to God for the way He's provided brothers in the church to step up and step in. And we mentioned that a couple of weeks ago, how we have people who step up and step in and are doing that when we have challenges and troubles in the midst of our church's ministry here. And as I was driving in today, listening to the Bible in 1 year, as I listen to it each morning with my wife, Psalm 107 really did focus my attention, and in terms of gratitude for what God is doing and how it is that when we see God deliver us from difficulties, however small or however large they are, that there's a kind of response that God calls us to. It's quite striking to me that God calls us to the kind of response that focuses us and points us to His care and kindness to us in light of, frankly, how He's delivered us in the past. We are preparing for Sunday morning, of course, and as you may recall, we're meeting at 10:30, not 10 o'clock anymore, but 10:30, and this Sunday we'll be here at the communion table, and we are preparing to give thanks to the Lord for what He's done and how He has cared for us as a church family, as well as individuals within the church. And the reading, as I mentioned, was from Psalm 107, beginning at verse, there's a whole beautiful long section here. He begins at verse 28 with a pretty significant point about how the Lord has delivered His people and how we are to respond. Psalm 107, beginning of verse 28, it says that they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and He delivered them from their distress. Now, this is just the most recent challenge at the church, and it's a pretty big challenge. We're going to have to address this water issue. But I know so many of you are going to come into this church this particular Sunday with personal and family challenges. Challenges that for you are far more significant than water leaking into the basement at the church. And there's something about recognizing God's deliverance of His people, that is God meeting us in our need, that calls for a certain kind of response of gratitude. And he goes on in Psalm 107, verse 29, where he said that He delivered them from their distress. So he articulates in verse 29, He made the storm be still, the waves of the sea were hushed. Then they were glad. That the waters were quiet, and He brought them to their desired haven. So, verse 31, let them thank the Lord for His steadfast love. That means his rock solid, ongoing, confidence building, absolutely assured of his kind of steadfast love. Let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love, for his wondrous works to the children of men. Let them extol him in the congregation of the people. Let him praise them in the assembly of the elders. You see where we're to be grateful? Here. In this place, on Sunday morning, when we come together as God's people, even particularly at this communion table, let us extol him for his steadfast love and his wondrous works among his people. In fact, verse 33 says, he turns rivers into a desert, springs of water into thirsty ground, a fruitful land into a salty waste because of the evil of its inhabitants. It goes both ways. He turns a desert into pools of water, a parched land into springs of water. And there he lets the hungry dwell, and they establish a city to live in. They sow fields and plant vineyards and get a fruitful yield. By his blessing, verse 38, by his blessing they multiply greatly, and he does not let their livestock diminish. And so verse 39, when they are diminished and brought low through oppression, evil, and sorrow, he pours contempt on princes, makes them wander in trackless wastes, but he raises up the needy out of affliction and makes their families like flocks. And here's the verse that struck me, verse 42. The upright see it and are glad, and all wickedness shuts its mouth. And so it ends with, whoever is wise, let him attend to these things. Let them consider the steadfast love of the Lord. And now we've been preparing for Sunday morning already. And if I had not been coordinating parts of the service with other folks, I think I might even change my sermon to go to that text. But in God's kindness, we're already considering the issue of gratitude and how remembrance of God's kindness to us in the past causes and calls for gratitude in the present. But see, that verse 42 just struck me. I can picture where I was driving on the road, hearing it being read on the podcast. The upright see it. See the deliverance of God. See the deliverance of God because of his steadfast love and the wondrous deeds that flow from that steadfast love to the children of men. The upright see it, and they're glad. And my simple prayer was, Lord, open my eyes that I might see. Open my eyes that I'll see it, and cause my opened eyes to see it, and then for my heart to respond with joy and gratitude and gladness. The upright see it. Those who are upright, those who are righteous, those who've been counted right with God because of the shed blood of our King, which we'll remember at this communion table. And so, friends, I encourage you, just prepare your hearts in the next couple of days as we come closer to the Lord's Day, and in the midst of all of the challenges we have, not just a water challenge, that's the most recent thing this year at the church. But ask yourself, when you stop watching this video, what's most dominant in your mind? Gee, what's going to happen with the water? How much is that going to cost? Who's going to do it? What'll we do? I wonder if there's going to be, is that the conversation we have? Focusing on what happens? Or do we focus on God meeting us in our need? And I know he always has to meet us in needs in an ongoing way, because challenges in this world, they're never done. Not like we're not going to have challenges. But is that where our focus is? Always on and worry and anxiety about the problem and about what we think we know, which is really unknown? Or do we look at where God has delivered us again and again and again and obey the calling there, Psalm 107, verse 42, the upright will see it and are glad. That we're glad, that we're thankful. And just let that sit with us. I'm not saying ignore the problem. I'm not saying the problem doesn't matter. I'm saying the text knows the problem. God knows there's a problem. And in the midst of that, God says, look, those who are my own, when they see me at work, their hearts are glad. And so, friends, I do invite you, 10:30 this Sunday morning, please spread the word. It's not as bad if people come at 10 o'clock. Maybe all of us will come on time for a laugh. But 10:30 we'll meet on Sunday morning. We're going to have a brief meeting afterwards, a business meeting, to consider some of the details of the Nepalese worship gathering that is to happen in the next coming weeks. And so the deacons will lead through that. If you can stay for 20 minutes, half an hour at the end of our service, we'd appreciate that as well. Do be in prayer and look forward to Mother's Day, May the 8th, for the Jubilants, Singers, and Orchestra are returning. First time in over 2 years that they'll have been back. In fact, they were to be here literally Mother's Day 2 years ago. Remember, the pandemic started in March, and so by May, we weren't able to have them. So here they are 2 years later. Very gracious of them to make real special arrangements to be able to be here. We'll have a barbecue fellowship meal afterwards. Really looking forward to that on May the 8th. Lord bless you, friends. See you soon. Cheers.